Okay, ladies and gentlemen, having discussed a 40-year term in the national competitions of all the soccer entities of the Hunter with Neil Jamieson, I'm here with Gary Van Egmond, and we celebrate 10 years since that fantastic day down at the Sydney Football Stadium when the Jets beat the Mariners in the grand final to bring the first championship home to the Hunter region. So welcome to Gary. Mate, just for the some people in the audience may not know, you were a very successful player. Started off as a left winger, I can remember, in the days of the RPA youth team, but ended up as a man marker and played very well for Australia. At that time, did you always have the feeling that you wanted to coach?
No, not at all. I remember going to Knox Grammar, and there was opportunities there where a number of the Marconi boys used to go up there and coach, and we actually got interviewed, you know, JP, Swartzer, Ocon, we used to go up there, Tommy, we used to go up there and do a bit of coaching for Knox Grammar, and we actually got interviewed, and I didn't have the patience, and the other part was I didn't have the expertise, and I never really thought it was going to be the career that I've sort of obviously forged. It more or less started with Northern Spirit, and Graham Arnold rang me and said, he goes, "Dushy, do you want to come and play for us?" I said, "Listen, Arnie, my calves, they're shot. I've got compartment syndrome, I'd be just taking your money." And he rang me about 2 weeks later and he said, "Oh, what about if you want to come and coach the youth team?" And I thought about it, and obviously, you know, as you get older as a player, you think to yourself, well, I want to stay involved in the game, and how do you do that? So I thought, all right, well, I'll give this a crack. And I still apologise to some of those players now for what I did to them. They were fit, but were running up hills, and everything that obviously you as a player felt that you were good at, you started to do as a coach. I don't know, there's a few hip replacements happened or whatever it might be, but you know, that's where it started, and it sort of obviously took off from there.
Okay, so you had a successful couple of years at that time. I can remember a couple of clashes with a certain Newcastle side that I coached, and I think we ended up losing to you 1-0 in minor semi-final. I've never forgiven Brad Swancott for dropping the ball on that day, but you had an early opportunity, not long after that, I mean probably a year or two after that, with the Jets, which came about after a poor start to a season with Nick Theodorakopoulos, who was the coach then. I mean, you'd had a year up there before when it was still Newcastle United, a year or two with Ian Crook. Came at just the right time for you?
Yeah, it really did, and it was basically, and Raymond Algaroto was our director of football, and he pulled me aside and said, "Listen, we're going to get Frank Farina in, but we'll have you for the next three rounds. Go and find someone to go and help you out, and just try and do as well as you can." So we had New Zealand Kings, and I had my daughter Emily training with Enswith, so I knew Jonesy. He was the only coach I really knew within the whole of Newcastle. So I said, "Do you fancy a gig? We can't pay you a great deal. You can keep your Enswith job as well." So that helped him out a little bit on the financial side of things. But we just started off, and we had success against New Zealand Kings. I think it was 0-0 to about the 70th minute. I'm thinking, well, this is going to be the shortest tenure ever. And we ended up winning 3-0, and we then went up to Brisbane, and Brisbane were flying then under Mirren, and we beat them 1-0. And then we came back, and that was a night where Harry Kewell came to town, and I think we played Adelaide, and I think it was 1-1, and I think, I'm not too sure who it was, someone had a shot, and Jado was on the line, and he saved it, and he got sent off, and I'm thinking, oh, well, you know, we've had a bit of a crack, and anyway, Carl Viet, I think, skied the penalty, and next thing, Nicky Carla scored that wonder goal, and we go and win 2-1, and the hierarchy said, "Listen, we're going to give you the gig for the rest of the year."
Yeah, very good. Now, the hierarchy, you talk about the hierarchy. How was the relationship with Con? It couldn't be probably the easiest relationship you've ever managed in your life, I wouldn't imagine, particularly when he signed twice European Golden Boot Mario Jardel. For me, that was one of the features, one of the highlights of your management rather than your coaching, maybe, to keep Con happy about that one, to show some respect to Mario Jardel, who'd obviously been a great footballer, but to also keep him out of the team.
Yeah, look, it wasn't an easy one. And Mario, look, he was a super guy. And you can see there was glimpses at training you saw of how good he was. But, you know, he was just basically shot. And, you know, Con wanted him here and he'd already signed him. And I remember him saying, you know, Gary, son, you know, you have to be at Adamstown Sports Ground. And so we rocked up. I had no idea what was going on. Remo just said, just go with it. And anyway, Mario got introduced and signed as basically the marquee. And look, you know, he had some injuries, so that helped us in regards to doing well. And because we're doing well, that took a lot of pressure off us from the position of having to play him. But again, you know, obviously Con wanted him to play, and to be honest with you, if he could do what he'd done previously, everyone would want him to play. But he just wasn't in any shape for him to be able to do that, and he understood. And at the end of it, I think Con saw that in the end, and it actually really was fairly pivotal in that year because it enabled us to get young Songa in from Korea, and he went out and Song came in and obviously added a real spark at a time where we needed something a little bit different as well, and it worked. Both ways worked really, really well for us. So that's sort of how that all transpired. But look, I got along with Con really well. I'd known Con previously when I was just repping for Pepsi, and he was at Parklea Markets, and we used to haggle over a price of a slab of Pepsi and how much you want to buy it for and how much you're going to sell it. So we'd already had somewhat of a relationship, and I knew Con very well, and Con was very good to me, and he stood by me, especially when there was the turnover from NSL to A-League. He was very good to me in ensuring I had employment as well. So I had a good relationship with Con, but again, you know, there was obviously issues where there were certain things that occurred which would normally not occur in normal practice. And I'd have to say George Liolio was very good in being a buffer at those moments. George was very good as far as a CEO was concerned. He really acted rather than reacted to situations. And then after him, John Tatsmas came in, who was also equally as good. So I was very lucky I had the good support from CEOs.
Well, you mentioned Songa and obviously Mario, and it was that year, and it's 10 years ago, and we celebrate that here tonight. What are your special memories of the season? You know, the players, the moments, the whole kit and caboodle, if you like. It was a great year.
Yeah, it was. You know, and it was back when there was only 8 teams as well, so you had to make a top 4. And look, we'd actually had a really, really good end of the year of 2006, 2007, and I thought we were a bit stiff not getting into that grand final. We went down on pens to Adelaide away. And I'll be honest with you, I actually think that was probably a better squad and a better team overall. I thought we played better football as well. And then the following year, we lost a few players. You know, it made it a little bit more difficult for us. But we still had the nucleus of that squad, and the momentum that we had from that year going into the 2007, 2008 was really good. We had stability in regards to the coaching ranks. So you know, it was really beneficial for us for that first instance to have that consistency of familiarity, if you like. The next part was looking at the players coming in, and again, I thought we recruited quite well from that perspective. Probably not as well as what we'd done previously, but we still recruited quite well. And then, you know, from that year, we're always hovering around that top 4, top 3. I remember the last round of the season when I think Sydney had to win or Melbourne had to win. I wasn't too sure, but we ended up finishing second. And I thought because we'd finished second, we'd got 2 bites at the cherry. And I thought that was going to be very, very pivotal for us to try and win the comp. And the most thing that stands out, you obviously have the season, and you know, I think there was a couple of players that had stellar seasons in there. Obviously, namely, you know, Joel Griffiths, who was Golden Boot, and I think he won the Johnny Warren medal as well. So there was a number of really good performances across that whole year. But within that final series, you know, we played Central Coast and we won 2-0, and I knew we didn't play well, and we sort of got away with it a little bit. And I knew we were going to be in a tough game in the following match that we had to play. And we went down 3-0, and obviously Central Coast went in. And after that game, I sort of tapped Jonesy on his leg, and I said, I know how to beat them, but we just got to beat now Queensland. So we got through that, and then, you know, we obviously went to 3 at the back, which we never played all year, but they played with 2 up front. So we had to do something a little bit different to throw them off their game, and something they didn't expect. So and look, as a coach, sometimes you take a punt, and the punt paid off.
All right, from the highs of 2007, 2008, the following year, bit of a dispersion of the squad, if you like, results at the opposite end of the spectrum, and you ended up going to the AIS, I think, in that year. And can you tell us the difference between managing, a football club that's at the top of the A-League table, to going into a job where you're working with youngsters all the time, the different pressures and the different aspects that you had to take hold of to do with it when you went down to sunny Canberra?
Yeah, sunny Canberra. Look, it was a shame that it ended that way, but where I had some control in the first couple of years, I had really basically no control come the next year, and the problem was what was promised to a number of players fell through. And once that occurs and you lose trust in any relationship, it all goes downhill, and it made it very difficult. Plus, on the positive side, a number of our players got identified to go to greener pastures. So, I think Joel going over to China, and I think Jado had an opportunity to go overseas. We lost Stewie and Bridgie, which made it very, very difficult. Ante Kovic, I think, left as well. So we lost the mainstay of those players. And what we didn't do well is have already a database of, well, if this one goes, what's going to happen? We had no backup plan. We're still too ad hoc in a number of our areas, and one definitely was recruitment and retention. So we needed to be better in that, but we weren't. And then I had an opportunity to go to the AS, and I'll be honest with you, when I was coaching the first couple of years at Newcastle, I'm thinking to myself, is this it? Is this is all you have to do, type of thing? And I thought there has to be more to it. And so an opportunity came from the FFA to go down to Canberra, and basically it was more or less a 2.5 sabbatical in regards to what you need to do from a coaching point of view. And again, it was a chance to work with the best kids all across the country in a really centralised program. And to be honest, I really thought I'd like to do that. Never went there as a player, always wanted to go there as a player, but now I went there as a coach, and I just wanted to experience that and see what that was like. And the other part of it was that I just felt I was losing control. I had a 4-year deal at Newcastle, and I love Newcastle. I've never coached anywhere else other than an A-League in regards to Newcastle, and I never wanted to leave, but I just couldn't see where the light at the end of the tunnel was going to be. And going down there, I learned a lot about football. I learned a lot about the maximising service providers to help football. And again, as you said, the differences between young players and older players, how much you play for a win in comparison to development, and the score's important, but how far that is important and what the balance of that is. Again, from technical development against an individual, looking at an individual more so than a team. So there was a lot of good things that I learned from the AIS, and I was pretty fortunate to work with a coach like Jan Verslaen, who was excellent at that time.
Well, I glanced down at my sheet, and you've touched on broken promises, so I might skip the one on the Tinkler era. We'll go straight to, you went from there, from whatever happened with Newcastle with Nathan Tinkler, to the emerging Jets, and I know it's a big issue of interest to a lot of people in our audience of football lovers. Had a couple of years there developing the youth. It's always seemed to me from the outside an area where we have problems, where not everybody pulls on the same rope, and without putting words in your mouth, you experience any of that side of things. What's missing, in your opinion, from a good development pathway, or is it in fact a good development pathway?
Look, I think it's a tough one whenever you're and let's be honest, we don't have the numbers in comparison to a Sydney and what have you. Obviously, from your period of when you were coming through Newcastle, first of all, you were playing in the top competition, and competition's a major part of development. And we stopped playing in the Sydney comp. I thought that's a big hindrance for the development of the kids. The other part is from the perspective of how we look at high performance in young kids, of how we develop those players and develop coaches to coach those players. I still don't think we have enough high performance coaches at that level to cater for some of those for those teams, and to see how we can maximise the players coming through. And like I said, competition and coaching, the two C's, are so paramount for the development of the players coming through. I just feel like we have at under 11, under 10 as good as kids anywhere across Australia. And then what is the difference for those kids between that age and coming through? I just don't see that we get maybe as good as coaching. We don't have numbers, and I think we've got to really look at the way in which we want the teams to play. So we talk about the curriculum. The curriculum's just a guide. We need to start talking about what we want players to do in the front third, and play with a bit more freedom and play out of position. And it just became so regimented for a number of coaches because they go through their C licenses and B licenses, and even that, from my perspective, is another area where we need to overhaul what the coaches are learning. So these are the coaches that are going to be taking some of our best players through their journey. So I think there's a whole combination of that, and then again, what's everyone's role and responsibility within the football fraternity? So you've got your technical director, you've got academy director, you've got a skill acquisition person who's in charge of that, and how do we manage all of that, and how do we get the best out of that? So that's that part, and then the other part is to grow the base. So we're talking about 16 kids that we identify at a certain age, and there's no underpinning program of such which really look to see how we can go to high performance. So, there's got to be some sort of gap, some sort of stopgap between an emerging Jex program and the NPL, and how do we start to look to see we combine some more of the kids in the NPL, because you can't tell me that 11 and 12 it's already done and dusted. There's plenty of really, really good kids out there, and at all different times they start to come to fruition, and we need to be able to broaden that so these kids have been able to train in a decent environment, so technically they're proficient, that coming in, there's going to be some differences, but they've got an opportunity to grow, because we're just specialising way too soon.
Okay, so you were telling me off air that you've just resigned from your job with New South Wales Football as director, technical director. I don't know if that's the official title, but I think we get the drift.
Yeah.
You've now got a full-time gig with the Matildas program. I'll tie that in with the last question I've got written down here for you. So you're at the Matildas now. What do you see in the future for Gary Van Egmond?
Yeah, it's a good question. I've been very lucky to be able to be involved with senior men, youth development, from academy director. Now I've been obviously with the Matildas and young Matildas, technical director of New South Wales. So it's been really, I've been very fortunate to be able to experience all of these roles. I think what you've got to look to see is there's part of you that goes, hey, I really think I enjoy this the most and I'm fantastic at that, and then your other side of your brain's going, well, hold on a minute, you idiot, you're really good at this, and you should concentrate on that a little bit more. So it is an interesting dilemma. But look, I'm really enjoying the job that I have at this moment, in with the Matildas, and now being in a centralised program for 15 to 20-year-old girls coming in and looking to see how we can get more Matildas coming through, and making sure that the succession plan for the girls is not going to be in a position where the men have sort of had that golden era where we had the Aloisis and Moores and Muskets and these ones and Zelichs and Ocons, and we had this real golden era, if you like, where we're going through that a little bit now with the girls. So it's important now that we look to see how we can fill that gap, or otherwise we could be in the same boat with the girls, and they're currently fourth in the world. So we've got some work to do. There's a lot of investment going on around the world, so it's great that the FFA have decided to invest in a program like this. But I'm very comfortable where it is. Look, maybe a change later on down the track, but at the moment I'm very comfortable where I am.
Well, Gary Van Egmond, it's 10 years since Newcastle won a title. That means it's also 10 years since I last had a four-figure win at the TAB. So I thank you for that, and thank you for your time today, mate. All the best.
Cheers, Loey.